Welcome to the Kerri Lane Show. I'm Kerri Lane. A lot of news for us to get to today, including the latest on tariffs and the economy. In fact, there is a backup plan that is brewing behind the scenes, and if China backs out, Trump is ready to unleash it. Plus, Chuck Schumer's firing off wild accusations about Trump and Ukraine while peace talks hang by a thread. But first, these headlines. The media is now running with the claim that U.S. citizen children are being deported. It sounds shocking, right? Until you actually look at the facts. Tom Homan and Rubio are calling it all out, and they are not holding back. But first, here's what Democrats and the media are saying.
The ACLU says the Trump administration deported 3 U.S. citizen children with their families, including one suffering from metastatic cancer.
Well, first, what he's doing here is just outrageous and against every iota of what Americans believe. And this is not the only instance. There are reportedly other instances where U.S. citizen children were deported without any due process.
Now, ABC News joins in on this narrative, writing a headline that claims a federal judge said he has strong suspicion, which means no facts, just a narrative, that the Trump administration deported a 2-year-old U.S. citizen to Honduras with no meaningful process. Here's Tom Homan setting the record straight.
No U.S. citizen child was deported. Deported means you got to be deported by the immigration judge. We don't deport U.S. citizens.
The mother was deported along with the children.
The children aren't deported. The mother chose to take the children with her. When you enter the country illegally and you know you're here illegally and you choose to have a U.S. citizen child, that's on you. That's not on this administration. If you choose to put your family in that position, that's on them. But having a U.S. citizen child after you enter this country illegally is not a get-out-of-jail-free card. It doesn't make you immune from our laws.
So are you starting to see the game that's being played here? The media twists the facts to make it sound like the government is forcibly deporting American kids, when in reality, it's all about parents who are illegally here being sent home, and they're choosing to bring their U.S. citizen children with them. Huge difference. Here's Rubio pushing back against the media's lies.
Is it the U.S. policy to deport children, even U.S. citizens, with their families, and I hear what you're saying, without due process? Just to be very clear there.
Well, no. Again, if someone's in this country unlawfully, illegally, that person gets deported. If that person is with a 2-year-old child or has a 2-year-old child and says, I want to take my child with me, well, then you have 2 choices. You can say, yes, of course you can take your child, whether they're a citizen or not, because it's your child. Or you can say, yes, you can go, but your child must stay behind. And then your headlines would read, U.S. holding hostage 2-year-old, 4-year-old, 7-year-old while mother deported. You guys make it sound like ICE agents kicked down the door and grabbed the 2-year-old and threw him on an airplane. That's misleading. That's just not true.
So let me get this straight. The media is outraged that illegal immigrants are taking their own kids with them when they're deported. But they stayed silent for 4 years while 300,000 migrant children went missing in our country. Kids who in many cases ended up in the hands of human traffickers. Where was the media then? Where was their outrage? I mean, really, what is the bigger issue here? Kids going home with their moms, or children being lost in a broken system and handed off to criminals? Once again, the left manages to land on the wrong side of an 80-20 issue. DHS even issued a statement regarding the 2-year-old the media says was deported to Honduras by writing, quote, parents are asked if they want to be removed with their children, or ICE will place the children with someone the parent designates. In this case, the parents stated they wanted to be removed with the children. We take our responsibility to protect children seriously and will continue to work with federal law enforcement to ensure that children are safe and protected. Let's move to this next story. 2 judges making headlines for all the wrong reasons. Let's start in Milwaukee with Judge Hannah Dugan. She is accused of helping a once already deported illegal immigrant who is facing battery and domestic abuse charges after allegedly beating his roommate and girlfriend, to escape arrest out the back jury door.
The facts here, to me, there's some holes, especially in this idea that she tried to get him out when it seems like they went out a public door and were seen by the very people who then arrested him.
That prosecutor had this case on his docket. He had the victims there in the audience. For the victims, and I'm a big victim advocate, this was a big deal. And the thing that really bothers me about the judge, and I think this is a big mess, is that she adjourned the case without telling the prosecutor and without telling the victims. And whether there's probable cause or beyond a reasonable doubt could convict her, what that to me shows that she was willfully trying to hide that defendant from being arrested.
Looks like we have another clear case here of a liberal judge defending an illegal over an American citizen who is the actual victim in her courtroom. Same goes for Judge Jose Cano, who we now know attempted to cover up crimes after suspicions arose that he was harboring an illegal terrorist.
That the judge admitted to smashing a cell phone with a hammer because it could have had photos that would reflect negatively on Ortega Lopez, and that his wife consulted with him over how to delete Facebook posts. Judge Cano is now charged with tampering with evidence, while his wife Nancy is charged with conspiracy to tamper with evidence.
Now, here is the formal complaint against the former judge. If we go to page 3 of that complaint, it says it all. It basically states that Cano destroyed evidence to protect a gang-linked criminal. He knew the risk, and he chose to shield a threat over keeping his community safe. All right, let's shift gears now to the economy, specifically the Trump tariffs and what that could mean for your wallet. Agricultural Secretary Brooke Rollins says relief is on the way, especially for your grocery bill.
When the president was sworn in, the price of eggs had increased 237% under the last administration. I mean, obviously food under the last administration, the average increase was 25 to 30%. You mentioned the numbers, but when you look at the wholesale cost of eggs, which drives the retail cost, the retail will follow soon. The actual wholesale cost of eggs is down 58% in the last 6 weeks. So other parts of the country, we've seen a significant decline in the retail cost. Some parts of the country it has not followed yet, but it's coming.
Now, as for trade, several deals are expected to be made this week. Many eyes obviously on China as they specifically cut back on our soybeans, which they're now turning to places like Brazil and Argentina for. China is also planning to purchase less pork from the U.S., which could have a negative impact on our farmers. However, Rollins says our farmers will be protected.
Our soybean farmers, some of our row croppers, some of our pork, et cetera, they certainly they're more in the crosshairs than a lot of our other agriculture industry. But for the most part, every farmer I've talked to says we understand this and we are with you. And we also know that President Trump will ensure that if there are significant economic damages, that just as in the first term under the China deal phase 1, that we will be, the harm will be mitigated. And so we're already preparing for that.
Isn't it nice to finally have a president, as we say in the news biz, who is live and all over it? See, I don't think the Biden administration ever had a plan B. In fact, I think you could easily argue they rarely had a plan. Now, during Trump's first term, you may remember there was a bailout for farmers during his first round of negotiations. So what will that look like this time around? Here's what Brooke Rollins had to say on that.
We won't really know the consequences really until harvest time, which will be later this summer, early in the fall. But we are watching it and analyzing it every single day, and we're preparing for it. I'm on constant conversations with our friends on the Hill, where the funding comes from, and everyone is committed to ensuring our farmers and our ranchers, which food security is national security. So it isn't just about protecting the farmers and ranchers. It's protecting the great American experiment and the American dream.
Now, it's worth noting, under Biden, we saw a $50 billion agricultural trade deficit. He was handed a $0 trade deficit under Trump's first term. That's not just mismanagement, it is economic malpractice. Now, meantime, I want to get you caught up on some news. A lot happening on the Ukraine-Russia war front. President Trump has been under a lot of scrutiny lately by legacy media as he works to try and broker a peace deal between these two countries. Here's Secretary of State Marco Rubio on the issue.
Everyone should hope that we're successful. Instead of rooting against President Trump, everyone should be hopeful that President Trump can bring this war to an end, because it truly, at this point, is not good for anybody. It may not work out. Peace deals are hard, but we are trying, and I think the president deserves credit for spending this much time and this much energy and these many resources to try to bring about this outcome of peace.
In Rome over the weekend, President Trump and President Zelensky met for the first time since their infamous Oval Office face-off. A lot of people watching this. And according to Zelensky, it went pretty well.
Mr. President, how did the meeting with Trump go?
Really, we had
productive meeting. I don't want to go to a lot of details, if it's possible, because the questions, very sensitive questions, on, of course, totally it's about how to bring peace closer and how was resultative, positive Paris and London, and we want to continue such meetings to bring peace to Ukraine.
Not everybody appears to be on board at this point. Trump posted this message on Truth Social calling out Putin and the media. He wrote in part, quote, "There was no reason for Putin to be shooting missiles into civilian areas, cities, and towns over the last few days. It makes me think that maybe he doesn't want to stop the war. He's just tapping me along and has to be dealt with differently through banking or secondary sanctions. Too many people are dying." Senator John Kennedy agrees that Putin is playing games.
He has jacked around President Trump at every turn. He has disrespected our president. I don't think it's going to get any better until we make it clear to Mr. Putin that we are willing to turn him and his country into fish food. And I'm not talking about nuclear weapons or nuclear war. I would start with oil.
What's interesting here is under the Biden administration, America and Europe agreed that Russia can continue to sell its oil as long as it doesn't get more than $60 per barrel. Russia gets 1/3 of its revenue from oil. That's decent. This is definitely a tool that could work to the president's advantage. Now, meantime, Chuck Schumer, he's going around cable news saying Trump is somehow abandoning Ukraine, which is an odd thing to say after Trump and Zelensky just had a productive meeting.
To just abandon Ukraine after all the sacrifice that they made, after so much loss of life, and with the rallying of the whole West against Putin, it would just be a moral tragedy to undercut Zelensky, which I believe Trump is headed in that direction. And maybe worst of all, it's a sign that the United States is weak. It sends a signal to every dictator in China, in North Korea, in Iran, that if you stand up and bully Trump, you're going to get your way.
A real journalist would have followed up that answer by asking, Mr. Schumer, if you think Putin is getting away with bullying Trump, then how do you explain President Biden telling the Russian leader, don't, and yet he did? Did Biden show the U.S. is weak too by having no response because it was under his leadership that this war started? Of course, you won't hear them ask that type of a question, which is why many of you are with me now, and I am forever grateful for that. Another question that was raised by the media is how will the Trump organization be able to know they can actually trust Putin if a deal were to be made? Here's Rubio's response.
Well, I don't think peace deals are built on trust. I think peace deals have to be built on verification, have to be built on facts, have to be built on action, have to be built on realities. So this is not an issue of, of trust. It's an issue of building in these sorts of things, verification, security guarantees, things that have been discussed in the past. All these things are being talked about here. All of these things.
Yeah.
But right now, it's not the time. If we're trying to bring two sides together, the last thing you want to do is give some side, one of the two sides, an excuse to walk away from this effort.
More negotiations are expected to take place this week. Rubio said they want to make sure they've exhausted every option possible before walking away from these negotiations, because he says once you do that, you're basically just throwing diplomacy out the window. Now, for those of you who missed out on how Democratic Senator Chris Van Hollen's visit to El Salvador majorly backfires, you'll want to check out my next video. I also show you a shocking moment where the blame game explodes and Dems are left looking very desperate. Go ahead, click on it now, and have a great rest of your day.